All right, looks like we're on Facebook Live. I have not done this before. My name is Joth Riggs. I'm a filmmaker. And Laura May of Christian Casting has asked me to come on and do a little chat with you guys. So I need to find out how I see your feedback. Let me see. Sorry about this. Okay, hold on. What do we got? All right, very good. All right, so somebody comment, guys, if you can tell me. I know you can see me. Can you hear me? And it looks like I'm seeing some comments popping up here, so that's good. All right, so can you guys hear me okay? Somebody give me a shout out. I see you. I see you, Michaela. Can you hear me? Pierre? All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, I got a yes. Thank you very much. All right, good to know. All right, perfect. Thanks, guys. All right, well, my name is Joth Riggs, and I have been a filmmaker for over 28 years. And so Laura May asked me to come on and share a little bit about my experience. I'm going to talk a bit about how I got started in filmmaking. I'm going to talk about basically what it takes to make it in this business. I'm going to talk about the differences from when I first started and where we are today. A couple of different markets: secular market, faith-based market, big studio union films, low-budget non-union independent films, theatrical, streaming, what used to be home video, a lot of different avenues. So I've had experience in most of it, and I'm going to share a bit with you about that. I know a lot of you are actors. I will share from the filmmaker's perspective. I'm not an actor, but I have obviously worked with probably a couple thousand in my years, and some really great ones, and some ones I'd like to forget. And my perspective is going to be a bit more from the production side, the filmmaking side, sort of the nuts and bolts. Some of you may have seen me at ICFF. I've spoken there a few times. And so I know Laura May wanted to expand a little bit the audience beyond just the acting and talk a little bit about production. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. This is kind of weird, though, to have a one-way street here. I see a bunch of you on, but I can't see any of you. I'm just looking at my face here. That's funny, but anyway. So thanks for the grace on that. I'll chatter away here, and I see your questions. I'll give some time for questions as well. But let me just tell you a little bit about how I got started in filmmaking. The first little glimpse I got of filmmaking was in high school. I had a very creative group of friends, and we, just for fun, we made little videos, and we were all in church youth group together. We would show them at youth group, and it was a whole lot of fun. Everybody really enjoyed the experience. And so we made one. It was a hit. We decided to make another. It was a bigger hit, and so then we decided to make a few more, and then we would involve all of our friends, so everybody got to participate. And it was a fun collaborative process. I gravitated toward orchestrating them just as my nature, and so we ended up making 4 or 5 of them, and each one got a little bigger and a little more elaborate and better production value. And I liked it so much, I actually started thinking, hey, I mean, what would it take to do this for a living? And fortunately, I've been blessed geographically. I'm from Southern California, so I'm very familiar with the film industry. It's the area I grew up in. So I was aware that there's a career to be had out there making movies, and I said, well, why not me? And so I decided to go to film school, I'll share a little bit about that experience. I know a lot of people ask, do I need to go to film school? I'll answer that. My experience was film school. I mean, if nothing else, I wanted to go to college, get a degree. So I did. I studied film and television production. And for my internship, my senior year, I managed to get myself an internship on a feature film because my cousin was the director of photography on that. And but I worked for free, and I worked my butt off, and I slept on somebody's couch for 2.5 months, almost 3 months of the shoot. I didn't make a single penny, and loved every minute of it. It was grueling. It was a lot of work. So the internship that I had, my responsibility was to set up the monitor for the director. I was what you call video assist. But this was in '92, and everything was on film. Nothing was immediate. And so we had monitors set up for the director. We had multiple cameras and a separate monitor for each camera. And on top of each one of those was a VHS deck. And so I had to record every take coming through the monitors onto the VHS decks. And when the director wanted to see playback, I had to hit stop and hit rewind and go back and play the videotape so that the director could see the takes. But the best part about that is that I literally sat next to the director in a director's chair from the very first take of the movie to the day we wrapped. Could not have been a better experience. I mean, I literally shadowed the director. The film was Pet Sematary 2. And I learned firsthand what filmmaking looked like. I always wanted to direct, but one thing I did discover on that film that I was completely unaware of prior to that is what an assistant director was. The assistant director calls the shots, and they run the entire set. The director focuses on performance and getting the actors to deliver great performances. The director of photography, cinematographer, they're in charge of making pretty pictures so that the actors can work within them. The production designer is in charge of making the sets look great. The assistant director orchestrates all of that so that the director doesn't have to think about anything. And all they have to do is call action and cut. And so when I saw our first AD on that show, I'm like, what is that guy? What does he do? I like that. And so I always wanted to direct, but I knew you don't just jump right into directing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be assistant director. Ironically, assistant directing is not a path to directing, per se, although I am directing. It's, in a lot of ways, it's the opposite type of thinking to what a director thinks about. It's very logistics oriented, it's very left brain thinking, while the director, in theory, ought to be right brain thinking. So it's interesting, it's a nice yin yang, and I have a bit of both of those, so to me it felt like it kind of worked out. So I had that experience on that film. I graduated after that and immediately went to LA. I went to college in Boston. I immediately went to LA to try and follow up and get another job. It was not so easy. And when I couldn't, I found myself going back to Boston where my fiance was, and we were getting married a year later, so I thought, okay, I'll wait, we're going to get married, then we're going to move back to California, and I'll start then. So I had a year window before I could kind of launch into Hollywood, as they say. During that time, I made a student short film. I actually went back and took more film classes, even though I'd already graduated. The advantage of that was that I didn't have math class to worry about or anything else. I was solely focused on making a film. This is again in the 90s when nothing was digital, so I needed to get access to film cameras. I needed to get access to Moviola flatbed editing bays. All stuff that was very costly in the real world unless you had access as a student. So I actually just enrolled for just the courses that I needed in order to get access to the equipment. So in doing so, I also teamed up with a bunch of students and made my first short film, which you're actually looking at right there on the reels. That was my first short film. It was called A Stranger's Kiss, that I directed. We had a small film crew, and it was a very interesting experience. So we obviously shot on film, 16 millimeter. We cut it and spliced it on a Moviola flatbed, similar to what you see right up there. That's not the same one. But it was a great experience because I got to understand filmmaking and storytelling and the process, the logistical process to get to that point, which involved cutting and splicing and so on. So it was a unique experience. So I worked on a big Hollywood film and saw what it looked like when you have 100 crew members. I worked on my little high school films where I saw what it looked like for all my buddies to just, do whatever it took. I saw what it looked like on a student film where people were training to do it in a bigger way, but weren't quite there. So I've seen different examples of that. After I finished that year, I finished that film. My goal was to get it into the Student Academy Awards. I did. I didn't win anything, but I made it and submitted it, and that was my goal. Then my wife and I got married and moved back to California, where I originally grew up, and I had a connection on the Universal Studios lot. That was somebody that was a grip on the show, who introduced me to the production manager on the show, Coach. And at the time, he didn't have anything for me, but he had told me to check back, and because I kept checking back exactly when he said he would, he still never had anything for me, but he was impressed that I did exactly what he asked me to do, and I followed up, and I was thorough. So he created a position for me. I was a phone page on the set, which meant I just literally sat next to the phone on the stage all day. It was actually a sitcom that the same company was making called Blue Skies on the stage right next to Coach. And I literally just answered the phone. And I made $250 a week. But I was literally working on the backlot at Universal Studios, and I was thrilled to be there. I didn't make anything on my first film. It cost me money to make my own film, and so I'm actually being paid. I was thrilled. And this was in 94. My first film was 92, my short film 93, 94 I'm at Universal. And then I ended up getting bumped up as to become a PA when that show went down, and I ended up being a PA on Coach. And then I happened to be in the right place at the right time when I found out that Amblin Energy Company was right next to us at Bungalow 78 Productions on the backlot, and I found out that they were hiring, and managed to get myself an interview, and I showed up. I called them from the interlot phone and said, hey, I hear you guys are hiring. And they said, oh, well, sure, come back next week. Maybe we'll give you an interview. And I said, how about right now? And so they're like, oh, okay, if you can be here in the next 5 minutes, sure. I was totally prepared for that and had my resume ready and my tie on and literally went running over there, and within 5 minutes was standing in front of their desk with a resume and got the job. So it pays to be persistent, it pays to be diligent, and it pays to do what you say you're going to do. And frankly, when you do what you say you're going to do, it shouldn't be a shock to people, so stick to your word. I got the job at Amblin, which was an amazing job, and the only thing better than working for Steven Spielberg for me was to be on set, because I worked at the offices. So I applied to the Directors Guild training program. I realize now that this story is going to go too long if I keep going at this pace, so I'm going to start doing some shortcuts here. I was fortunate. I got accepted into the Directors Guild training program, which is a very elite program. They take about, well, back then it was about 1%. I think there were about over 2,000 applicants. They took less than 20 people. The Directors Guild then trained you to be an assistant director in Hollywood. That's a 2-year program. And so for 2 years, I was a DGA trainee, an assistant director in training under the Directors Guild on studio projects that they put me on. So I got a crash course in how to be an assistant director in Hollywood and how to work with the unions and stuff like that. When I graduated the program, I became a full-fledged assistant director, a member of the DGA, and went on to work on all kinds of stuff that you've seen in my little bio. Lots of episodic television and features and sitcoms, and kind of run the gamut. Let me fast forward a little bit, because I know some of you are probably wondering how I ended up in faith-based films. So I did the union studio thing for probably 10 years, and it was a grind. During that time, my wife and I had kids. I have two beautiful girls, and they were young, and I wasn't seeing them much. I was working as a second AD, doing typical 80-hour weeks. For those of you who are new to this business or aren't aware, the hours are long. 12-hour day is pretty much a minimum. In the union world, it can be as much as 16 hours. I was doing that pretty regularly, and I wasn't seeing anybody, my family. 5:30 call times Monday morning, getting home 10:30 at night. I wasn't seeing them until the weekends. So it was really hard on the family, hard to be a dad, hard to be a husband, and I started seeing patterns, at home. My youngest was just a toddler, and she was very unfamiliar. I was kind of like a stranger to her, and it just broke my heart. I started recognizing, man, there's a lot of broken families in this business. I started seeing things through a different perspective, and oh man, these guys are divorced, and these guys their kids are on drugs or in rehab, or they're estranged from their kids, and I saw myself kind of going in that direction, or at least in that same environment, and I said, you know what, I don't think I can just keep doing this and not paying a price ultimately. And so I decided to just take a break and not go back to a particular series. During that time of the break, I was able to kind of re-engage in life outside of Hollywood. And, my wife and I were involved in church small group and stuff like that, stuff that I couldn't do when I was working. Taking the kids to sports and ballet and school projects and stuff like that. And again, re-engaging. So at the end of my self-imposed hiatus, I thought, well, am I just supposed to go right back to that? I didn't think that was a good idea. And then, of course, the kind of content that I was involved with that wasn't a good match for my values and so on. So I decided to find another avenue for my creativity, and that would allow me to be in better circumstances. And ultimately, I ended up starting my own video production company, Whitestone Productions, and did corporate videos and weddings and stuff like that, and it was a great season of life when my kids were in their school years, and I was able to work from home quite a bit, and so it was a good time of being able to get my creative juices flowing and still be a husband and a father. So it's important to have your priorities, and so I did that for about 8 years, and my kids grew up, and then I got a call a few years ago to do a faith-based project, and there hadn't been such a thing before that when I was in the business. So I said, that kind of sounds like missions work. Yeah, I can go do that. And when I did it, I just remembered how much I loved being on set, how much I missed it. And I knew I had a lot to offer, especially in the faith-based film community. At the time, was really new. And I decided, you know what, if I can just do the right projects, just do projects that mean something to me, whose values I can support and get behind, I'll do the occasional film. And so I decided to put my name in the hat. I've been really fortunate. I've been doing that ever since. It took over. I don't do the video production anymore. My kids are out of the house now. I'm an empty nester, and so it's perfect for what it is right now. And I've been very fortunate to work on, again, as you see in my bio, I've worked with all the people who you've heard of. I've worked with pretty much all of them. I think I've done probably 20, 25 faith-based films, something like that. And I've got several more lined up, ready to go. And so it's been a good run. And here I am. In the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to direct. I've done some short films, some television for PureFlix. I'm currently in post-production on a feature, Blindsided, starring Natasha Henstridge, that we're actually right in the middle of a cut as we speak. In fact, I'm squeezing this in, and I'm going to go right back to it when we're done. But it's looking great. It's coming out this year, and I'll be sure to let everybody know about it when it's time. And I've got another great film that I'm directing, a World War II film that's in development right now as well. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to jump back to some of the other questions. Do you believe someone can be a self-taught filmmaker? The answer is absolutely, no question. I do not think film school is necessary. I think there are great advantages to film school. There are disadvantages to film school. Disadvantages are you spend too much money for the most part, and it's a different era. It's a different era than when I went through, because I mentioned before, you needed to get access to film equipment. You don't need that anymore. Now, of course, we could shoot high def and edit right on our phone, which was not possible back then. So you can try and fail and not spend a gazillion dollars. But back when we actually had film stock, it made that a whole lot harder. So nowadays, no, you don't need to. But there's some huge advantages. First of all, I'll say to break into the film industry, you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you the most important thing, frankly, is who you know. Sorry, that's true. Okay, because there are a gazillion people that want to be in the business. People who are in hiring positions don't tend to just randomly reach out to strangers. They're going to call who they know. And if they don't know people in that certain position, they're going to call their friend that they know and say, who do you know? It's all about networking. It's the devil you know versus one you don't know, or something like that. They still feel like it's a safer bet. That doesn't mean everybody does that, but it's pretty rare to see just some help wanted ad in a legitimate place where you're actually making money doing it. I mean, working for free is a different story. But to actually make a career out of this and to make a living. So what's important is networking. Now here's the difference. Once you make those connections, you've got to deliver. It's not enough to know people at that point. You got to know people to get your foot in the door. But once you get the opportunity, you have to make the most of it. If you aren't on it, if you aren't right there, ready to do whatever it takes, without attitude, without grumbling, without saying, when do I get to go home, when do I this, when do I that, you're not going to get a second chance. So the networking is going to give you the first chance. The second chance is going to come from your hard work and effort. Okay? And it's also important that you really try and hone in on a skill. I get way too many resumes of people that say, I'll do anything. Frankly, that's not super valuable to me. But if you sent me one and said, I really want to work in the art department, I've always wanted to do set dressing, or I really want to work in camera, or whatever, well then it's like, okay, now we're talking, I got a place for that. And then, and it's competition and you interview and so on. But my point is, it really helps to focus on what you want to do. Now here's the good news. You can change your mind. It doesn't, and frankly, it can be different depending on the project or who it is you're talking to. If you're talking to it's fine to play to your audience. If you're talking to somebody that you know has an opportunity maybe in the camera department, it's fine to say, I really want to work in camera, and here's my skill and experience that makes me a good person for that. And then the next person who's got an opening for art department, it's fine to say, I really want to work in art department. It's not lying. We know we'd love to do anything we can. It's just honing in. It's the same with movies, frankly. When you make a movie, you've got to know what your target audience is, and then you've got to nail it in the bullseye so that your audience knows that's for them and then signs up and buys a ticket. All right? Anything in life, frankly. Know your audience and then work really hard to just nail that. If you try and be too much to too many people, you're nothing to nobody. Okay? So, and again, don't be afraid to get pigeonholed. At least get your foot in the door. You can always adapt and change, once you're there. So in terms of self-taught, get out there with your phone and make films. I had a young person tell me that they were interested in going to film school and that they wanted to be a film director and asked me for my advice. And I said, get out there and make as many little films as you can. I said, how many have you made so far? They said none. And I have to question, do you really have what it takes to make it in the film industry? Because it's a very, very, very competitive field, and what you need to have the energy to fight off the thousands of other people is passion. If you don't have a passion that says, I have to do this, this is what I was born to do, frankly, you should probably find an easier thing to do, because it's just going to chew you up and spit you out. You're not going to be able to compete at that level because it requires that. And, and again, there's some harsh truths here. The film industry is not for everyone. Now, I'm coming from the perspective of a career, and I get that it's not the same for everybody. For some people, it's I have a day job and I do the occasional project when the opportunity comes, and that's great. That's a whole different thing. But if you're really kind of all eggs in that basket, then you have to know what it takes, and it takes a lot. And it's not for everyone. Now, you may be one of those people that has to try it and before you recognize that, and that's fine. Some of you may be hearing this now and think, yeah, I don't know, maybe not. Okay, maybe I'm going to save you some heartache, okay? Because it's got to be oozing out of you. If you're really going to be successful, you've got to want it that bad, to be frank. I apologize that I have a really hard time seeing all of these little, I got this much screen with little questions popping up that I can hardly see. So when I'm done, I'll just try and scroll back through those. I'm going to hit my questions and then I'll do a question and answer time. So the biggest shift I have, let me jump back a bit. In terms of going to film school, a huge advantage to film school is networking, is the people that you go to film school with. Right off the bat, you now know people in the business. And even if you're all kind of clawing, there's a good chance you can collaborate in some form. A, you're collaborating to make your own little projects, or B, you are able to bring on some of your friends or vice versa on a project, and then that's one way to do it. That's, to me, the biggest value of film school. It's great to learn all of the skills and so on, but you can learn all that from YouTube videos. You can learn that from trial and error. You can learn that from interning or shadowing for free on somebody else's set. Learn what mistakes are being made and say, I'm not going to do that. I saw how that went. There's ways to learn good and bad. You can learn from the greats and you can learn from terrible people, because you're like, that crashed and burned, I'm not going to do that. You learn every which way. So, that's how life is in general, right? Observe, pay attention, see how it can apply to you going forward. So that's what I think the advantages to film school. But like I said, there's plenty of ways to learn filmmaking. There's a ton of books out there. I don't know if you can see them, but I've got stacks of film books, and I've read every single one of them. If you're not that hungry, again, you're probably not going to be able to cut through the pack. But there's a lot of you out there I know that are. So read everything you can. Study film. Study filmmakers. Listen to directors' commentaries, behind the scenes. Anything you can get your hands on. Just soak it in. Soak it in. And I will say this, and some of you who have heard me talk, you'll know this is my personal quote that I always tell people: know enough to know you don't know enough. No matter who you are, you've got room to grow. And I use the example of Steven Spielberg. When I was there, I heard him say he didn't consider himself a master. He still studied the masters that had gone before him and didn't consider himself one of them, and still worked at perfecting his craft. So if Steven Spielberg still has something to learn about filmmaking, every last one of us certainly does. If you're not growing, you're dying. It's like a shark. Sharks have to stay in perpetual motion their entire lives, or they'll suffocate and die. So career-wise, if you want to make it, if you want to be good, then you have to continually be working at your craft. Get good. And I'm going to beg people in the faith industry to know that you have to be good to cut through the muck. Okay? It's not enough to just be a faith-based project. Frankly, we have a higher standard as it is. But we're certainly not going to make a dent in the secular market if we aren't caring about the quality of the craft. So please know that that's critical, and know that it's a lot of hard work to get there. Now, we all make our substandard projects until we get there. That's fine. You got it. You got to try and fail. You got to try and fail. But don't spend a bunch of other people's money until you're ready to do something with it, because it blows the opportunity for others out there when a bunch of people lose their money, and then they're worried about getting into the business. Try on short films, try on cheap projects, hone your craft, get good. And then I love Steve Martin's advice on making it in the business, which is to be so good they can't ignore you. Bottom line, if you want to know what's going to get someone's attention, being really good at what you do. That's what's going to happen. The shift in the last 28 years that I've been in the business is two things. Digital, streaming. Those are the two biggest shifts. When I first started, we were shooting on film. Now we're shooting digital. The barrier to entry has dropped to the floor. Anybody can make a movie. Not everybody can make a good movie, but that's up to you to get there. There's no barrier to entry anymore. If you want to borrow my phone, I'll let you. All right? Anybody can make a movie. So there's no excuse there. Streaming is the other thing. Of course, not everything has to go and play at the cinema. Not everything needs to get a home video distribution model. Now you can upload it on your own YouTube channel or whatever. Again, very little barrier there to making a product from concept to delivery. The trick is being really good. If you're really good, you get noticed. If you get noticed, you get bigger opportunities, and so on. Okay, so those are the big changes in my last 28 years. I'm going to get to a point now that I think a lot of you guys are probably interested in, which is, as a director, how important are good / great actors to your project. Vary. They're huge. And here's why. When we make a film, we are making an escape. All right? Audiences want to escape. They have, in order to be able to do that, they have to be able to suspend their disbelief and willingly give themselves over, sort of checking their logic at the door when they go into a theater, and they're telling the filmmaker, I trust you, entertain me, right? Take me into this world. In order for them to do that, they've got to feel like they're in that world or in that character's shoes. Authenticity is what that's going to take. So, on the one hand, you've got production value. You've got to have good locations, good sets, good cinematography, things that make it enticing to want to go into that world. On the other hand, and this is really critical, is good acting, good performances. I remember having a director give me advice once when he talked about directing actors, and he said, as soon as you see your actor acting, cut. And I thought, that's brilliant. Yeah. You don't want to see actors acting. You want to see characters. Whoever they're portraying, that's who you want to see, not the actor playing that part. I mean, with rare exceptions, sure, there's big actors that we kind of excuse as far as that goes, but generally speaking, we want to believe they are that person. And as soon as your viewer starts to feel like that's not that person, that's an actor pretending, and I'm not buying it, they check out. As soon as your viewer checks out, it's really hard to get them back in. If they don't get in, then your movie doesn't have good word of mouth. If it doesn't have good word of mouth, your ticket sales drop to the floor. And in order to make money in this business, you've got to have good word of mouth. And so, yes, it's very important to have good actors. Okay. There's a second factor here, and that is the fact that it's a business, period. Hollywood is a business. And like any business, you need to turn a profit. So one of the best ways that at least Hollywood believes in order to do that is to have bankable names. So that's a little bit of an anomaly where essentially a name is going to get you in the door, because a name is trusted by your viewer. Oh, if so-and-so's in it, they're typically in good movies, so therefore it's probably good, so I'll go see it. Unfortunately, for those of you who aren't names, that's something you're contending with. But not every actor in a movie is a name, and so there's a lot of places to fill in. Now, I feel for actors because I get that you guys don't have the same opportunities as filmmakers behind the camera. If you're good in a certain position, in theory, anybody can do that role. But frankly, if you're an actor, you've got to look the part, you've got to match the type of the character. It is what it is. So obviously that eliminates a lot of people, and you can only go out for certain kind of roles and so on. You got to have thick skin to be an actor. What can I say? That's probably why I'm not one of them. I don't know. I have a lot of respect for actors. It's a tough job. And, same as I was talking about for behind the camera, in front of the camera, you've got to have a lot of passion to keep fighting. Because I know you guys have to go to auditions. You guys have to put yourself out there constantly. I don't know what the return rate is, but I know it's not good. I know that you're turned down 10 times as often as you are hired. So it's a tough road. I know. So good for you guys. Good for you guys for hanging in there. I've worked with some great actors, and as I mentioned before, certainly some forgettable actors as well. In terms of memorable moments, and this is the last question Laura May gave me, so I'll start to open it up to questions after this. I think one of my most memorable actor experiences would be, I worked with Christopher Walken on a movie, and it was called Suicide Kings, and it was like a mob movie, and it was a great film. But it was an ensemble cast. So Christopher Walken played a mafia don, a mob boss, who was kidnapped by a bunch of frat boys, a bunch of college boys. And so we had Jeremy Sisto and Johnny Galecki and Sean Patrick Flannery and Henry Thomas, a couple more, I think. I forget who they all were. And they played all the young college guys. This is obviously 20-something years ago. But that experience was really impressive to me. So obviously Christopher is an Oscar-winning thespian. He's a pro to the core. But one of the things that I noticed that he would do is whenever we would call him to the set, he would come immediately. He would walk straight over to the set, walk straight to his mark, and stand right on his mark and silently wait. While the rest of the actors in the cast would, okay, I'll be out in a minute, right? Take their time coming out of their trailer. They'd kind of waltz their way over, goofing around as they came. They'd come in, they'd go straight over to the craft service table. Then they'd be, oh, hold on, and they'd go over and, sit in their chair for a few minutes and, oh, let me finish up this thing or that thing. And slowly, all the while, Christopher's standing on his mark under the hot lights. Of course the film crew's all there waiting and ready. That's what we do. Just waiting for these guys to frankly get their act together. And one by one, over the course of a couple of days, the smarter ones learned it a little quicker, but they started to recognize what Christopher was doing. He was leading by example. And Henry Thomas was the first one to know, which is Elliot from E.T. And all of a sudden, he would start to come right away and go right to his mark. So then it just became Christopher and Henry. Obviously, the crew had a great deal of respect for Christopher. They're now gaining a lot more respect for Henry as a result. And slowly but surely, the others. It took a couple of days for some of the more hard-headed ones, but eventually they all got on board. I think by day 3, we had a pretty tight cast, and Christopher just set the tone. He said, "Hey guys, we're here. We are blessed to do what we do. Don't ever take that for granted, and take it seriously." And respect to him, he gave a lot of respect to the crew. He said, "Look at the crew. They're all sitting here waiting. They've been working the whole time you've been off, relaxing or whatever." Anyway, it's great to hear. You don't always hear cast members say great things about the crews. Crews work very hard, but it's also important for crews to remember cast works very hard. There's something that tends to get forgotten, I think, when crews think, "Oh, that actor just gets to sit in their trailer all afternoon." And I only know this from my very brief little experience in front of the camera. I have had very little. But, man, you know how hard it is to memorize lines? Holy smoke. And then some of these actors have 4 and 5 pages of dialogue to memorize. And so even though it looks like they're not doing anything, yeah, man, they're constantly going over their lines. They're sitting in their trailer. They're trying to get in character. See, here's the important thing for you filmmakers behind the camera. If you have a bad day, it doesn't necessarily affect the outcome of the movie. But if your actor in front of the camera has a bad day, that's your movie. It's hard to hide. All right? So if they're in front of the camera and they're having some issue that day, personal or otherwise, that's unfortunately very likely to be reflected in their performance negatively. So as a crew member, respect your cast. Give them space. Let them do their thing. Whatever their process is, it isn't easy. I remember on my very first set on Pet Sematary 2, when I used to think, oh, acting seems kind of cool. I'm in front of the camera right now. No big deal, right? Wrong. As I'm sitting, there was a scene at a dinner table. This was with Eddie Furlong, Clancy Brown, and it was this family, and it was a horror movie, so it was a very tense situation. People were dying in the movie, and as they're all sitting at the dinner table, somebody did something to kind of break the ice. It was tense prior, and then they all bust out laughing, and then they all had to just like full-on belly laugh for what felt like 5 minutes. And we did this take after take after take. And sure, it's funny the first time or two, but it was really hard even to think about when we were on take 12. And these guys all had to just uproariously start laughing, real laughter. And I just remember thinking, oh man, I could never do that. I don't know how they pull that off. Sure, we could all do the one-time thing once in a while. But anyway, so my point is, you don't know what it takes for actors to get in that space as crew. So respect that. And as talent, yeah, there's a lot of things you got to do. As a director, that's something that I have to address. When I talk to talent about their performance, I do everything I can to try and build up the environment for them. And because I recognize that they're in a headspace. They're in their head, they're this other character in this other place. They're not the actor, and they're not on a sound stage, and no, that's not 35 people behind the camera. So I do everything I can to try and build that by really explaining the backstory. Here's what got you here. Here's what led to this. Here's what they were doing before that. Here's how you feel about that. And then here's where you're going after, to kind of build in that direction. I chart characters' arcs and emotional arcs, among other things, on a scale of 1 to 10. And so, at one point, at their lowest, they're 1, and at their highest, they're 10. And so I'll say, okay, so you're at about a 4 here. So know that going in. Don't go all the way to 10, because when we get to a 10, you got no place to go. And similarly on the other end. So there's a lot that goes into that. And so, again, you got to give them your space. And I know I'm rambling here. Hopefully you guys can kind of grab tidbits that work for you and so on. I'm going to go ahead and, I've got lots of other stories I can share, but I want to make sure we get time in for questions. So now I'm trying to think. Man, I've got 5 screens in front of me. I'm trying to see what might be the best way to get your questions. Let me see if I can pull them up on here. So I'm going to kind of backtrack here. Thanks, guys, for your patience. Thanks for hanging in there. All right. So, oh my gosh, there's all kinds of stuff here. All right. Hi to everybody. Good to see you guys. You can hear me. All good. Okay. And all right. By the way, as I scroll through here, feel free to hit me up on Facebook. I am Joth Riggs, of course. I'm Joth Riggs on Instagram. I'm the only Joth Riggs on the planet. I'm easy to find. If you find another one, let me know. He's an imposter. Most of what I post on Instagram is photography. Incidentally, I often get mistakenly introduced as a cinematographer. I'm not. I don't claim to be. I enjoy taking great photographs. That's a hobby of mine. But I know too much about what it takes to be a good cinematographer to ever claim to be one. I know some great ones, though. And a lot of you said hi. It's good to see you guys. Hi to everybody back. And all right, great. So, by the way, so if you hit me up on Facebook, feel free to message me with questions, Instagram, wherever, social media. You can email me, joth@whitestoneentertainment.com, Whitestone Entertainment. Real quick, I'm going to give you the backstory on Whitestone. In Jesus' day, there were when they'd have a trial, there would be jurors that would hear a testimony, and they would hear the testimony, and then they would be given a black stone and a white stone. And after they hear it, they'd pass a pouch around. And for the jurors that believed not guilty, they would put a white stone in. And if they were guilty, they'd put a black stone in. And then they would just count the stones. And Jesus says in Revelations 2:17, I give you each a white stone. He gives us all a not guilty verdict. And that hit me so hard back when I was in film school. That always made an impact with me, and so that is the name of the company, Whitestone Entertainment, and that is our not guilty verdict. So, little backstory. All right, so cool to see a lot of people I know and people I don't know, people from the business, people not from the business, and all right. So hit me up with questions. I know I'm trying to scroll through a lot of these. Wow, Richie Wilson watching while heading to a train station in Tokyo. That's amazing. In terms of casting on my projects, I go through casting directors and so on. So don't send me headshots and stuff. That's not how I do it. So your best bet is to find an agent, manager, hook up with a casting director. There's so much out there. Chip Rossetti, never let school interfere with getting an education. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I know he can echo that. Yeah, Dallas said the devil you know as well. All right, I apologize that it's not a little easier for me to see all these questions, but... Oh, Annabelle, good question. Networking when you're still a kid. Gosh, I think you've done a great job. The fact that I know who you are. You know, you came up to me, obviously, at ICFF and introduced yourself, and I remembered that. I can tell that you're somebody who has the passion that we talked about. So, you know, I mean, it's a little different because you're not looking for a crew position. You just want to be remembered when somebody's looking for a role that you might fit. And social media is a great way to do that. I can tell you that when I started in this business, or when a lot of us were younger, social media didn't exist. You wouldn't even know who I am because we wouldn't be here right now. So you do have a huge advantage with social media. I will say that I use it to keep my name out there, and it's effective. So I would say, Annabelle, use social media to your advantage. Okay. Oh, Maggie Jenny, what do you want me to put on a shirt? Know enough to know you don't know enough. There it is. I use that as one of my anchors. Any advice about somebody wanting to start their own reality show? Well, I think the toughest thing for you there is going to be market. And I addressed this a little earlier, where you have to know your target audience. Reverse engineer that. You got one of two ways of doing this. Either you're doing this to make a successful show, or you're doing this because it's fun for you and it's a hobby. If that's the case, just make your show. If you sell it, you sell it. If you don't worry about it. It's fun, enjoy it. If you want to actually do this as a business, you want to sell it, then you've got to reverse engineer it. You've got to decide who wants this product, who's my market, or what market is out there that needs this, and how do I aim for it. But you can't. You can just blindly go into this. You'll likely just lose your money. It's a finicky market, as with anything. If you go to the grocery store and there's 6 types of the same product on there, you're going to be looking for one of a couple of things. Either it's the cheapest, it's the best because you know about it, or frankly, they had the best branding and marketing because you're familiar with it. You think you know about it. But the point is, you're competing no matter what, especially in the era of digital streaming. There's a lot of competition out there for eyeballs. And so give yourself a head start and find out what those eyeballs are searching for and make something for them. The good news is you can really niche the market in this era of streaming. You can be micro-select if you know there's a market for it. So I would say study your market first, and then make what that market wants. All right, what else? All right, moving on. We never know. Yeah, we never know enough. That's true. When I was learning the growing, great quote. All right. There's a lot of statements, not a lot of questions. I mean, I love your statements, but let me see. Yeah, be so good they can't ignore you is a Steve Martin quote. Okay. Here we go. Annabelle's got another question for me. How do we know if we're good? Oh, that's a great question. Ask for feedback and don't ask your mom. You know what she's going to say. Be willing to put yourself out there and get constructive criticism or constructive feedback. You can always take, just like any bell curve, you can always take the highest praise and the lowest complaints and just kind of lop off that 20% and just see what are the 80% in the middle telling you. All right? So God bless your mom. She's going to be on that end. And then you're going to have some haters for some other reason. They're bringing their own baggage to the table. You can ignore them as well. But what are the people in the middle saying? Just elicit feedback. That's the best way to do it. And then don't take it personally. It's very hard. And not everybody's going to be right. Use discernment. Some people, everybody's got opinions. And they're all over the place. So I think you just kind of have to suss it out. Find some mentors in the business. And then a few of them so that even then you can kind of suss it out. Because I will say, obviously I get asked a lot for feedback and opinions. It's really hard to be brutally honest. Generally, for the most part, I'm pretty harsh in my thinking. I don't always express that, but there are times when I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever read or ever seen, and it's terrible. And I'll be like, yeah, not bad. Okay, I'm sorry. It's really hard to be totally brutally honest. So you do have to take some things with a grain of salt, but that goes both ways. Some people are going to be overly critical unnecessarily. And I will say there's an audience for pretty much everything out there. So, but honestly, Annabelle, the fact that you say you need to improve, you're miles ahead right now, already. I've actually worked with people who think they're all there. And you know what? If nothing else, the whole world is going to keep growing and go right by them. So even if they're at one point leading the way, if they stop growing, They're going to get passed right by. All right. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're all right. We're getting there. I know I'm like milking this hour. I wish I could read these things faster. Sorry about that. So again, if I don't hit you up here, I'll try and get you later on with Facebook or something. Like I said, you can email me, what have you. Being so good they can't replace you, Harmony. Yep, that's a good point. Thick skin, for sure. All right. Sorry, I know this isn't good television here. Well, I have so many great comments, but not so many questions. I guess that's good. You guys got it all dialed in. Yeah, acting's hard. The actor's responsibility. Respect the time. By the way, in terms of respect, it goes both ways. I said that crew needs to respect the actors. The cast really needs to respect the crew. Here's something that's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and that is, frankly, know your lines. It's not just for the crew, but frankly for the rest of your cast. I've unfortunately been on shows where some actors don't really bother, and they'll just kind of show up and kind of half remember their lines, and then you got the rest of the cast in the scene that's just nailing it, and you end up having to do multiple takes for this one actor because they didn't do their homework. That's not fair. It's not fair to everybody else. So be a professional. If you want to be in this business, just be a professional. Don't be the one that's causing everybody to have to go back and do it over and over again. Okay, thank you, Harmony. It's not rambling. Okay. Knowing not to push. All right. Thank you guys for a lot of great comments here. I appreciate you. Thanks, guys. Oh, thanks. The photography, I love that. It's a lot of fun for me. By the way, I actually have 3 photography albums on my site, my Facebook page. I have scenic landscape photography, which a lot of you guys are familiar with. I have another one for behind-the-scenes set photography, where a lot of it's all from film sets. There's a lot of good stuff on there too. And then I have a third one that's just unique. It's called, I can't remember. Anyway, it's just really unique, kind of abstract stuff. It's a lot of fun for me. A lot of people ask me all the time if I sell my stuff, and the answer is yes. I'm just starting to do that. I am making my photography available for gallery prints. So if you're interested in gallery prints, hit me up. Although that's not why I'm here, but I get asked that question a lot. All right, good. I think we're kind of... Do you like live auditions? That's a good question. It really just depends on the role. Honestly, no, not so much. I like to be able to analyze kind of privately. I'm very easily distracted. I'm the same when I'm directing. ADing is a different story, but when I'm directing, I'm kind of like this. I like to get into the zone. I like to get into the world with my actors. I'm the director that's sitting by the camera as much as I can be, right in there at the set. It's kind of the same with casting, where if I feel like there's somebody watching me or waiting for my response, I'm distracted by that. I feel like I'm obligated to say something or give them something to, hey, good job. I may not be in that place. Maybe it's not about good job. So to me, just to see tapes is so much better, because I don't feel any added pressure to do or say anything other than do what I got to do, And if I like somebody, well, then it's different. If we're talking callbacks, if we're talking, leads, obviously that's different too, because there's a lot more than just acting. You got to get along and so on. There's a lot of other things. You consider yourself a shot style director or coverage style director? Pros and cons. It's the best strategy you've used to bring out the best in actors in a scene. Well, the second question, what's the best to bring out the best strategy, or the best strategy to bring out the best in my actors? Personally, I'm a method director. just like you got method actors, I feel as though I'm in the scene with my characters. And I try and communicate to my actors as the character when we're in the scene, not as the actor. In rehearsals, that's different. But when it's time and when we're there, we've already had our preliminary conversations, we've already had our preliminary rehearsals, we've already talked backstory and all of that, motivation and so on. Once I get past all that and we get down to rolling cameras, then it's you, me, and nobody else. You as the character, not you as whatever actor. So then I'm saying, well, how do you feel about that? And I'm not talking about the actor. I'm saying your character. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about what just happened? Well, doesn't that make you think this? And don't you feel that way? And wouldn't you react this way? And so on. So, shot style director or coverage? Well, I did do a lot of episodic television, so I'm very familiar with coverage. I'll always make sure I get the coverage because I know that I'll hate myself in the edit bay if I don't. But I also really like stylized shooting. So I try and get the stylized shots, and then I'll get the coverage of safety to make sure I've got what I need, because it's really hard to go back. If you don't get everything you need in camera, you're probably going to have to take some shortcuts in the end. So I'll make sure I've got the basics covered, but I'll also try and, I want to make it interesting. I want to make it fun. Movies are fun. Movies are not dull. And frankly, it's different than television. I'm not as interested in television. I did a ton of that for a long time. It's very formulaic. It's different now. I get it. But when I did all the network stuff, it was very formulaic. And you couldn't get away with the shot style. So now in features, you can. So I try and do that. How does somebody get into PureFlix? Reach out to PureFlix. You can ask them. All right. Joth, you have no idea what your backstory. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Victoria. Thank you. I completely respect your approach to the industry. Thank you, guys. And guys, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still growing as well. And frankly, a lot of you guys I've worked with a bunch of you. I know. Worked on a lot of different sets. Some of you guys will see things I do and say, wow, that's great. I'm going to do that. Some of you guys will see some things and say, I'm not going to do that. I don't like what he just did. That's fine. Like I said, we learn from everything. Some of you are going to learn from my mistakes. I haven't done everything perfectly. I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm grateful for grace. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to try and improve and get better. And I hope each one of you guys are doing that yourselves in life. Here's another thing that's really important to remember. Becky, do I ever notice spell check wants me to be Josh? Are you kidding? I'm rarely called Joth in this world, and I take what I can get. Anything remotely close has got to be good enough. And I know I just sidetracked myself. Hold on. Okay, what's really important in this business is boundaries. You got to have boundaries, especially as an actor. Know where those boundaries are. Don't fumble your way into them. Don't cross the line and then realize, oh, that was probably a boundary I should have had. Think. Be intentional about everything that you do, okay? Because whether that's faith-based or indie or studio or whatever, just know where your boundaries are. Know what's okay. Know what you're willing to do, and be absolutely ready to say no thank you in any circumstance. No thank you. You're going to need that as often as you're going to need a yes please. So be aware of that. Is it difficult for a Latina actress with an accent to break into the Christian film industry? Well, the Christian film industry is unique. It's its own thing. I will say it's matured quite a bit in the past. Fireproof was 08. Passion was 04. Passion was a bit of an anomaly. I think Fireproof was one of the first ones that kind of started to get the ball rolling. So we're talking 12 years now. And now we have things, we have Irwin Brothers with the studio deal, for example. And we have the whole gamut now. So I think there's just as much opportunity in faith as there would be in the secular film industry. It's kind of no different in terms of what may or may not be required to tell the story. Again, just get good at your craft, get the word out there that you're out there, and knock on as many doors as possible. Get yourself out there. Because if you have 99 no's for every one yes out of 100, just know you're not going to get to that one yes until you've got your 99 no's. So just start knocking out those no's. You know, just go through them as quickly as you can, because you won't get to the yes until you get through all those no's. Del, it's great to see you on here, brother. I've worked with Del in a couple of films. All right. Reverse engineering. Yep. Thanks, guys. Best way to break into directing department. Well, as a department, you're either talking about directing or you're talking about the assistant directing department. Director's kind of his own thing. The best way to direct a film, guys, is to direct a film. I know it's not an easy answer to hear. You're not likely to get hired to direct a film out of nowhere. Chances are, if you want to direct, you're just going to have to grab your phone or a camera and go out there and direct a film. And then make it a lousy film. And then you learn from all those mistakes and then make a better film. And then make a better one and a better one and a better one. You're a director. And then eventually, you get good enough, somebody will pay you. But you got to make the first leap. You're the first person to hire you as a director. It's not going to be somebody else. Directing department as an AD, that's different. To be honest with you, it's a whole different skill set that requires a lot of learning and skill and time. There's a great book out on how to be an AD. It's called Running the Show by Liz Gill. And it's a great book on how to be an assistant director. Read that. Reach out, and this can apply to other positions. Find people who are really good in those positions and ask them if they'll mentor you, or if you can buy them coffee or lunch, or just take a few minutes to answer a couple questions. Be very considerate of their time. I get asked it a lot. A lot of people do. Just don't take up a ton of time. Be very precise, concise, grateful, and you'll get some nuggets from there. I've always felt complicated about using social media to promote myself as an actress. After hearing what you said, I feel like I'm no longer afraid to... Yep. Yeah, why not? Social media is out there. Use it. As long as you're treating people with respect. Will you be at the Christian Film Festival in Nashville? I won't. I'm actually gearing up to go do a Western. I have another film right after that. I've got quite a few films lined up that's going to keep me busy for a little while. Michaela, don't ask your mom. Yep. I think I'm getting to the end here. Let's see. Any suggestions of those? Full-time ministry. I would like to have more opportunities for acting. By the way, guys, I know I'm a little bit over on time. You know what? I know that you guys know the drill. If you're done, you can hang up and God bless you. I'll just kind of keep going to just kind of finish this out. And if you have to go, that's all fine. But I hate to leave some of these questions undone here. All right, I'd like to have more opportunities for acting, all toward the goal for opportunities of platform goal for Christ. Been blessed to be in a number of projects. Oh, auditioning tips. Yeah. Auditioning tips. Well, I mean, look, the best actor is authentic. Authenticity is the best thing. And who was it? Johnny Carson that said it, or somebody said it. And if you can fake that, then you've got everything made. But, you know, I mean, that's just it. There's a lot of great resources out there for learning how to be a good actor. And I don't have any specifically for you. I mean, I know James Lipton just passed away, who's got some great interviews from the acting studio. Those are some great ways to learn the craft. But frankly, just learn the craft. Be good at it. No job on set is too small, Chip. I agree with that. And let me also say, you never know in a freelance world where your work is going to come from. So respect everybody. Frankly, you need to respect everybody, period. That's just life. Be a good human. But on a side note, business-wise, you also never know where your job's going to come from. I've been hired by PAs that I find out their dad is somebody big. I treated them well. I got that opportunity. I was hired once by a craft service person. It turned out that they're married to a producer. I didn't know that when I worked with them as a craft service person. You know, you just never know. But like I said, it should be a no-brainer anyway. Just treat people with respect, and that'll come back around. What do you prefer? Oh yeah, okay. So John Wayne Bosley, you got your question in there twice. I hope I answered that for you. I prefer shot style. What do I look for in great acting reels? Well, diversity. Because ideally, I'm looking for something that looks super close to what I'm trying to cast. So range. Range obviously shows ability. I have no background in theater, so I'm more interested in subtle acting. I am so impressed with an actor who can act without looking like they're acting with no dialogue. And I think, the best, most skilled actors are the actors that, here's a great example. Look at the diner scene from Heat. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. When they were delivering their lines, that's one thing. But pay attention to them when they're not. They're still those characters. And it's really impressive to watch. A lot of times you get actors that only know their side and don't seem to be, I'm on set, so I can really see it. But sometimes you can tell they're just waiting to deliver their next line. And it's obvious. And, so subtle acting is impressive to me, and there's nothing more subtle than silence, So anyway, those are some examples. So what makes them stand out in an audition or a self-tape? I don't know. I kind of answered that, I think. Now, there may be opportunities for sort of the big, grandiose sort of thing, but that just doesn't tend to be my style. Obviously, this creative field style it varies all over the place. I talk about making a good film. Talk about how you think faith-based films can be improved. Eddie, right on, brother. I've worked with Eddie a bunch. That's a great question, Eddie, and I think what it boils down to is respecting the craft of filmmaking. I feel like too many people in the faith-based industry sort of hold their nose at the craft of filmmaking as if there's some inherent evil in it, and it's sort of like, in spite of the fact that I have to use cameras to get my message out there, I'm going to do it. No, embrace it. There's nothing wrong with filmmaking. Filmmaking is not secular or Christian. Filmmaking is just a tool, just like anything else is a tool. Learn how to use your tool properly. And, if you're going to be a carpenter, know how to use a hammer and a nail, and I was going to say no pun intended, but I'll say pun intended. Nail it. Just nail it. Get it right. Because the better the vessel, the better the message comes across. And if that message, as we know, is as important as we know that it can be, don't mess it up with... Now, granted, look, God can talk through a donkey, so he can use terrible films to get his messages out there, but they have far more impact if you really respect the process in which we get that out there. Respect the vessel. In Jesus' day, they those craftsmen, their pottery was fine, and they only had the best pottery for the best wine and whatever. It's probably a terrible analogy, but Eddie, bottom line is, don't ignore what it takes to be a great filmmaker. As believers, that's a separate thing, all right? That's who we are as people. And then, of course, our message, our values are going to be imbued in the product. But what good is it if the product is faulty? So let's make sure we get the product right. What's the best audition I've seen and what made it so? Oh, gosh, I don't... I just worked with a wonderful little actress. It was her first time on camera. She did school plays or something like that. And I'll just say it, bottom line, it was authenticity. I believed her. I was watching her on screen thinking, yeah, she believes that. That's her. That's who she is. And she brought it when we filmed. I cast her, and she was amazing. So just off the top of my head, it would probably be that one. Lots of questions toward the bottom. Gotcha. Thank you. I hope maybe I'm getting there. I don't even see a little marker. Favorite movie I wish I'd directed? Oh, Chip, that's a good question. There's quite a few. I think Book of Eli is a great example. I love that they made such a dramatic film that also had such a great story and message, and I like a good twist. But there's other films out there. I like really good films that make you think. Memento, for me, was an amazing film. I liked Inception. I liked Gladiator. I like films that really make you think, that don't string you along, like that really make you try and figure out what's happening next. I've also been blessed to work on some really great faith-based films. One of my favorites was Heart of Man. Heart of Man is a very powerful film with an amazing message that I highly recommend. Best way to break into directing? Which entry jobs will help get you there? That's a good question. PA. PA is the best entry job there is because you are essentially exposed to the whole gamut. You're there to pick up all the loose ends, so to speak. You work directly for the assistant directors. You help run the set, but you're there. You don't learn until you get in the mix. You got to get in the mix, and that's the best way to do it. The best way to get into directing, though, as I mentioned, is to direct. Just do that. So ideally, be a PA on big films with professionals, learn from them, and on the weekends, go out and shoot your own stuff. That's a great mix. There's two ways to become a director, and the path goes like this, okay? And so either you start off as a small person on the totem pole, and you work your way up. You start as a PA, and then maybe you become an AD, and then maybe you become a DP or a camera assistant and a DP, and maybe you end up directing or an editor to director. So that's one way. You kind of work your way up. But that takes a long time, and frankly, those opportunities are few and far between, especially nowadays with the studio world because of tentpole films. Frankly, studios don't make as many films as they used to. Warner Brothers used to make 80, 90 films a year, and now they make 15. There just aren't that many opportunities. There's still only one director on a film, So whether they're making 100 of them or 10, there's 90% fewer jobs out there. So working your way up is a tough way to go. There are people that stayed in the system that I was in are still second ADing on the big studio projects. My peers from that generation, they haven't even been able. A lot of them haven't even been able to make the jump to first AD yet, much less directing, and that's been 25 years. So it's very tough to move up because it's such a coveted place to be. People generally have to die before there's opportunities, So the other path, as I mentioned, is to make your own projects and then get better and better and better and better and better until they get bigger and better and so on. Those are the two ways to do it. Pick your favorite. All right. Be prepared. Thank you. Thank you. It is a village. It takes everyone, cast, crew, to make a project a success. Kim, you are so right. Filmmaking is nothing if not a collaboration of skilled, talented people. Unlike an artist who paints, where it's just them and a canvas and a paintbrush, it takes upwards of 100 or more people to pull off a feature. And it's so hard. And by the way, this is a good opportunity for me to throw in there that one of the most important things you could do to get right in order to have a successful project is to get the script right. Get it right before you ever start spending a ton of money on things. That's as cheap as your fixes will ever get in the process. Get the script right. Don't move forward until it is, or until it's so close you can taste it. Then you start to move into pre-production and development and stuff like that. So I've worked on so many projects where I feel like they're rushing into production. They feel like production is going to fix things. No, it's not going to. It's only going to compound problems that you've already had. If you can't fix it in the script, it's very unlikely you're going to be fixing it in production. likely you're going to end up fixing it in post, and it's going to cost you 10 times what it would have cost you if you'd have fixed it on the page to begin with. All right, so if it doesn't work on the page, just stop until it does. And if it never does, move on to the next project and save a lot of money. You got to make a lot of money in order to get a profit on a film, because not only do you have to make all the money back that it cost you to make the film, but almost twice as much, because you've got to now also earn back what it cost you to distribute a film, to market a film, to brand a film. And so you've got to make double your money just to break even. And again, if you don't turn a profit, you're likely never getting a second bite at that apple. So get it right early in the process before you move on. All right. Thanks, guys. What entry role and set can help you eventually get to director? I think I asked that. Oh, it looks like some of you guys are re-asking your questions. That's good, because I'm missing some. All right. Thanks, guys. Thoughts on actors looking like their headshots? Well, Gene, I think that headshots is only a start. Obviously, the reel or an audition is what's going to mean more. Because you're not, unless it's a really specific role, you're not looking for that exact thing. You're looking for a bit more than just what that looks like. Plus, I would imagine, I know headshots one picture, but ideally there's a couple of variations. Now, if it's a total bait and switch, then I feel like my time is wasted, and frankly, I'm not likely to give that person a shot if I feel like they've been kind of intentionally sort of trying to slip in. Because again, there's a lot more that goes into casting than just a pretty face. They've got to, can they pull it off? But then even beyond that, like, you're going to need them for marketing and branding and as an ambassador for the project potentially, and social media and all those things. So if they're not somebody that can pull that kind of weight, there's too many opportunities out there that you're just going to pass people like that up. How do you decide what you're going to direct? Do you read scripts, or are they given you? Well, Jenny, it's a whole different thing for me than when I'm ADing. I AD a lot. I've been doing it for a long time, and it's a different thing for me. I make sets happen, but it's not my product ultimately. So it's not as critical. Although I only work on stuff that I can put my name on. I'm not doing anything that I don't want to put my name on. But as a director, I've got to have a vision. It's got to be a story I want to tell, and I have to feel as though I'm the guy to tell it, because it's so easy to get wrong. If I don't have, and it takes forever. A film takes more than a year of your life. And so if you're not really passionate to tell that story, it's just going to be nothing but headaches. It's going to be headaches from top to bottom. And in the end, might crash and burn, and you might not get another opportunity. So I've turned down way more directing opportunities than I've taken, because I know, as an AD, it's not so much a representation of me, but as a director, yeah, if the film's not good, that's a reflection on me and my ability. So if the script's not there, or it's just not my story to tell, I've gotten some great scripts that just aren't me, that are like, hey, that's going to be a great movie. And frankly, I'd love to AD it, if you want to call me, but that's not my story to tell. You know what I mean? So it's a lot more personal when I'm choosing a script to direct as opposed to AD. What speaks to you? What stands out in an audition? I think I mentioned that. Authenticity primarily. Let me see. Okay, most of it toward the bottom of the feed. Yeah, okay, I'm getting there. I wish I had more than an inch of screen with all these on here. An actor's director. Okay, yeah, great, thank you. A few of my favorite films or TV shows and why. Well, I have different reasons for liking different things. I like to totally just escape. As I said, like Gladiator is a film I love, because I love being taken to another era, another world. I love escaping. And when production values are high, like on a show like that, there's a lot less things taking me out of it. The second thing I like are films that don't spoon feed me, that I feel as though I'm an active part of trying to discover and figure out on my own. So those are my favorite, the kinds that really make me think. How do you decide to, okay, do you read scripts yourself? Does the company send them to you? Both. I search out scripts. I get scripts coming my way. The problem is it takes so long to develop a project that I have a bunch of scripts right now that I think are really good. I couldn't possibly keep reading more. I'll never have time in this life to make them. I've got one right now that we're moving forward on that is fantastic. I'm very excited about it, but it's going to take up the next year and a half of my life. So in that sense, I don't need any more scripts. Predetermine your boundaries. Yeah, thank you. Boundaries. Yep, thanks, guys. Amen. It's okay to say no. Absolutely. It's not just okay. It's necessary to say no. Stay true to yourself. Being intentional with boundaries. Yep. And I've mentioned this before to some younger actors as well, especially if you're kind of just starting out. It's easy to get sucked up into all of this stuff. Please don't. None of it's worth it. It's just not that big a thing. We are not curing cancer, so just remember that. Your values, your integrity, your personal relationships, your relationships with God, all way above being involved in filmmaking. All right, so please remember that. You may regret it if you get out of balance. Okay, knock out those no's. Yeah, as an actress, let me see. I've said no. Yeah. How do you feel when you have to work with violence, nudity, drug use? Honestly, I'm not a big fan. I don't. How do you feel when you have to work with violence, nudity? Well, I don't do any nudity at all. That's a boundary. Violence. I mean, that's not as hard for me. For me, it has to be intrinsic to the story. All of those elements have to be. If they're not intrinsic to the story being told, then they're gratuitous. And by that, I don't just mean having that element. I mean in the manner in which you tell it. You don't have to show somebody being ripped apart to get a message across, unless you're just making an exploitation film. I don't make those. I tell stories. So if I need to convey that, I have to find another way to do that, because it becomes a different kind of film. In some cases, those are the hooks for films like that are exploitation. But again, that's not my market. For me, it's personal stories, compelling stories, and sometimes it involves violence and so on. Again, not nudity, but some of the other elements. And I certainly don't glorify it. But again, it just depends on the story. So I think everything in proper context. I'm an adult, so I have discernment. I hope that people watching have discernment. If they're sensitive to certain things, then they need to know that, and they need to know where they shouldn't cross lines. Some films they shouldn't see. There are certainly films that kids shouldn't see that I don't think are necessarily inappropriate for a discerning adult to see. I'm not talking inappropriate content. I'm just saying some things are not healthy. Even if it's acceptable in society, doesn't mean it's always good. And Annabelle, you remembered that advice I gave you 2 years ago. That's right. And I was thinking of you when I said that. Good for you for having boundaries and remembering your priorities. Running the Show by Liz Gill. Yep. All right. Nashville, CWVFF. Yep, I know a lot of people are going to be there. Someday, hopefully I'll get out there. Like I said, I'm on a film, so I won't be able to. Hi, Mimi. Good to see you. The Western is one that I'm ADing for INSB Films, and so I'll let them talk about that, since I'm not directing. It's not my film. Mine is a thriller. Thank you for the extra time. Yeah, thank you. Man, I'm just rattling here. Okay, if I ever get to the end of these, then we'll almost be done. This is what happens when I get going, but you're still watching, so thanks for hanging in there, guys. How do I pick what I direct? Yeah, I think I've answered that, Jenny. Hopefully you caught that. It's got to be a story I personally feel compelled to tell. Do I look at unsolicited reels from actors? No. Sorry. I'm really good with boundaries, and I have a ton of things to do in my life, and looking at unsolicited reels from actors is not one of them. This is me being direct, so I apologize, but that's why, again, I suggest that the best thing is casting directors, agents, managers, that sort of thing. Because I'm just going to go to them. I mean, it's just too difficult to just kind of randomly throw some net out to the world, you know. Hey, Trevor. Good to see you, brother. Peter O'Toole and the Stuntman. Best actors are the ones that know how to listen. Amen. That's right. Yeah. At least they're certainly a lost art for sure. Yep. It is a craft and a tool. Amen. Okay. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thank you, guys. You're saying nice things. I'm words of affirmation, so this is good. Thank you. God can use your film for good. It's funny how I can see how far back I am. All right. Prayer lifted up for your projects, and also praying for all in Nashville. Yeah, thanks, Ted. Thank you. Thinking Films. Amen. Production assistant for those who... oh, sorry if I just said PA. Yeah, PA stands for production assistant. And there's lots of variations of that. There's set PA, there's office PA, and then there's certain departments that sometimes have their own PAs. Camera might have a PA, wardrobe might have a PA. But generally, PA means you're working for the assistant directors, helping on set, primarily with things like lockup, which is keeping people quiet, keeping people from walking into the shot. If any of you guys have specific production questions, that's really my specialty. How do you find ideal writers to work with? Well, that's a good question. First of all, there's a lot of great scripts out there, so writing them from scratch, unless I've got some funding interest already, I'm not likely to do that. It's just a real uphill battle. Much easier to just have a script and then say, you know, can I get funding for this? Is there a market for this? Can I get distribution for this? But that said, I do have a writing partner. We've worked together for years, and you just, for me, I need to work with somebody that, you know, we have a good working relationship with, and respect is huge. All right, keep up the good works. Thanks for inspiring us. Thank you, guys. Let me see. Lewis, you're starring in an action movie, martial arts. Cynthia Rothrock at the moment. Yep, very good. One of the DPs, very cool. The Lord has placed it on my heart to also do faith-based films. Great. Well, get some great scripts. Either write them or find them or whatever. But, yep, Dana, you get it. Thanks. Let me see. Lewis, your acting coach says when you're not in front of the camera acting, you better be behind it, writing, directing, producing your own films. We have no excuse in this day and age. That's true. But just remember, again, to have boundaries so that you remember that it's not the only thing in life, and it's not even the most important thing in life. Music videos. That's a great way to start, Dana. Yeah, that's actually what started my high school videos with my friends. We were in a band together, and we started making music videos, and those music videos started turning into short films. So I actually started there as well. There's actually a brief season of my life where I was going to be a professional musician before I decided filmmaking was more my thing. All right. My projects mostly SAG, yeah. I think I've only worked on one non-SAG movie in my life. Maybe two. Yeah, so for the most part, everything is SAG. Passion has to drive the end product. Yep. Yep, you got the SAG answer. Thank you for your time. Thank you, guys. How many days a year do I travel? Gene, that's a good question. It's, you know, again, now that I'm in a different phase of life, it's different. As I said, I'm an empty nester. I have two older daughters. One teaches English in Korea, so pray for her right now, as she's actually under quarantine. And the other one is with Youth with a Mission, YWAM, in New Zealand. But that said, I don't do a lot in LA anymore. There's just not a lot of faith-based stuff in LA. So, I mean, I travel at least half the year. I love it, but I mean, the good news is I do it in chunks. So I'll be gone for 2 months, and then I'll be home for 2 or 3 months, and then be gone, and then so it's kind of nice. For me, it works, and I've been freelance for my whole career, so you do get used to the ups and downs. You definitely got to know how to budget. How do I feel about hiring non-Christian actors or crew for Christian films? Yeah, Dell, absolutely. I say hire the best for the job. No question about it. I mean, it's an opportunity to witness to them if they're not Christians. I mean, I've worked on lots of faith-based films with non-Christian crew and cast who have noticed a difference. If nothing else, it's an example to lead by example. And we certainly don't want to shy away from that. We're not called to separate. We're called to live in the world, not among it, but in it. And, would we think twice about hiring a non-Christian plumber? No, it is what it is. We all have jobs, whether it's in the film industry or anywhere. We don't pick and choose, but we only work with good people. We shouldn't insulate. Now that said, again, boundaries are important. First of all, you got to lay down the law, so to speak. There's certain behavior that's unacceptable. Non-Christians on a faith-based film crew need to understand the project that they're on and respect that. But anyway, I think that says it. Yeah, time commitment for sure. It's so important to measure that before we choose a project. Kirk Cameron once told me, just use discernment when choosing what scripts and roles that come my way. Use discernment with everything in life, frankly, But yes, absolutely. We're not curing cancer. Thanks, Venus. Absolutely. Yep, we don't need to show gore. Okay, yep. So it's funny here. It looks like we're about 7 minutes behind on the conversation. Swear words. Well, that's a good question, Dawn. I personally don't choose to use them. I don't necessarily want to make films that do. Here's what I kind of use as an example. Not so much now because we're in the streaming world, but look at network television. Network television manages to give us adult dramas without a bunch of language. I mean, again, streaming is a different thing, but something on ABC or NBC is not going to have the F word. How do they manage to tell such great stories without doing it? There's lots of ways. So I find those ways to tell that story. I don't have as big an issue personally watching stuff like that. I mean, if it's over the top, then I don't want to. But I can be discerning, but I'm not going to be the one putting it out in the world. All right, thanks, guys. A lot of agreement there. Inappropriate content. Yep, thanks, guys. Yeah, sorry there's so many latecomers to the party, but the video will be available when I'm done, if I ever shut up. Thanks, guys. Let me see. I think it's going to look for. Okay, right on. First time generally finds. Do I find scripts or do scripts find me? I look for them. I look for hooks. By the way, if you're interested in, not for me because I got plenty, but if you're trying to get somebody's attention, it's got to have a hook. If you can't sell them with your log line, it's not there, in my opinion. Because it's really easy to have a nothing script. Way easy. And so the odds are if you can't hook me with the premise, then it's a mediocre story, to be honest with you. That's just my opinion. But it's too easy to waste time in this business that I'm not interested in it, So if you were to want to get somebody like me, my attention, yeah, give me a good premise that, oh, wow, this meets that, or this guy does this, or she does that, or whatever. And it's like, oh, if it makes me go, huh, wow, that sounds cool. Yeah, then we got something. All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, Derek. Praying for my daughter, appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Which states have the most faith-based films? Georgia, probably. Any place with a good tax incentive. I mean, I've worked in every state, I feel like, and mostly the South. I mean, to be honest with you, Virginia, Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina. I know your tax incentives went away, but I thought they might be coming back. I'm not sure. I mean, to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter if a film's faith-based per se. You know, you go where the resources are. You go where you can get good funding or rebates or good crew or good resources or good locations. That way you can make a good faith-based film. There is no state that's better for a faith-based film or not. If you're referring to any sense of hostility, you know, we're all individuals. There is no giant group think regarding faith-based films. If you get on you can be on a set in the greatest place and have bad people, and you can get on a set in the worst place and have good people. So it's all about your people, not necessarily the state, other than the incentive. Any of those vintage Joth in a band music videos available for us to view? That is funny you ask that question. I hesitate to say, yeah, probably. I don't know if I'll elaborate on that. If you want to see Joth in a mullet behind the drums, it's out there. That's all I'll say. New law in California regarding freelance workers, AB 5. It's terrible. The only reason it's not a bigger deal to me is because, frankly, that was the law to begin with. That didn't really change. A filmmaker technically is not freelance. If you're told what time to show up for work and what time to leave and how to go about your business, you're not freelance. That freelance moniker is really meant for the electrician that comes and redoes your wiring. You don't tell them to come and clock in at a certain time and eat lunch at a certain time and do it this way and go. You say, fix my electricity, fix my plumbing. So technically filmmakers never qualified as freelancers. It's common among low-budget indie films, but it's actually not legal. So I don't really see a whole lot of that changing. I'm probably still getting freelance offers from some of the same people, and I'm still being put on payroll for some of the same people. It might make it harder for them to get away with 1099ing. But unless you're a loan out, you're technically an employee anyway. All right. Asking for a friend. You're funny. Okay. Most important time to be even better when working with non-Christians. Amen, Eddie. Yeah, we got a witness at that point. We are our witness. I moved to Tennessee from SoCal, and I agree with you that there is not much faith-based stuff shooting in Cali. Yeah, I haven't done a film in LA in 4 years. Obviously, when I was with the studios, I did a lot. But by the way, you can tell I'm OCD by the fact that I won't stop until I get to every question. That's what makes me a good AD. Thank you. Praying for my daughter. Korea's got the pandemic. Yeah, so far, yep. They are doing a good job. Yeah, she's actually fine for now. But yeah, it's a big deal over there. We are the salt and light, Cynthia. Yep. Yeah, if it's a great story, you don't need to be swearing. Yeah, well, story is the bottom line. Story and character. Just make us care. Make us care about your characters and what they're going through. Thank you, guys. Doing a bang-up job. Thanks, guys. Need to use our time wisely. Wasted time is wasted money. That's right, Dana, Chuck. There's a million ways to drain your time and energy. SAG member. Must I write, direct only SAG projects? I like to start by creating a short film. No, absolutely not. Cast whoever you want to cast. If you're just doing little short films, you can use SAG actors. I mean, even if you can't technically, they never make a fuss over that. Use whoever you want for your little freebie short film to practice on. Whoever you can get away with, I guess, whoever you know. When you get into bigger projects where there's money involved and it's a business, that's a little different. Then you got to play by the rules. Then you've got to have you got to do all your SAG stuff, and it's a pain. But if you actually want to make money, then you need a name, and there's no such thing as a name that's not SAG unless there's a couple of FICOR. If you don't know what FICOR is, I'll let you look it up. All right, Montana has good tax incentives. Oh yeah, all right. I have a winter film coming up. Who knows? Maybe I'll end up there. Yeah, Derek, clarifying on the freelance law, yeah. And I hear that they just passed one in the House, federally, about the freelancers scenario. Yeah, no, it's not a burden on me yet. I mean, any more than any of this ever is, you know, it's still an up and down business. Didn't catch the name of the band you were in. It was a fun band with friends, and it was called the Elastic Band. So how do you like that? And we had a lot of fun. Uh, I don't think you'd actually find anything if you Google that name, though. All right. Making the crossover was a huge leap, yeah. Yeah, it was timing and circumstances, yeah. What are my thoughts on FICOR? Personally, I say do what you got to do to earn a living. As long as you're ethical, who cares? You know, FICOR, for those of you who don't know, is when you are in a union, but you work non-union as well. Unions don't want you to know that that's a thing because it waters down their power, but it is a thing. So just know that. Do I do much in Texas? Yeah, I've done a few films in Texas. Amarillo, Houston, Dallas. Yeah, all right. Anything going in Georgia in the near future? Gosh, I have films in Georgia all the time. I've done 5 movies in Georgia, including my first. Pet Sematary 2 was in Georgia. That was my very first movie. All right. Char, you're doing well as non-union. Are there incentives for somebody to join SAG? Well, if you get enough work, the incentives would be benefits, but it depends on how much work you get. Benefits being health care, you get residuals, but that doesn't mean you can't negotiate those deals without SAG. I mean, I don't know how likely it is, but, you know, in theory, whatever deal you can negotiate is fair game. You know, some people can negotiate a better deal than even SAG will get you. So if you're in demand, then you can call your own shots. And if not, then SAG might be, I mean, to be honest with you, you should ask a SAG member. I'm not a SAG member. So I think somebody else who is could probably give you a better insight on that. But I will say that generally I'm always going to go SAG on features because we need the names. Chuck, I'm a drummer. And I have recently taken up the bass, as you can see, just for fun. But I'm a drummer. The Western is shooting at Old Tucson Studios. And look at that. I made it to the very end. Jim Ball, you just made it in at the end here. Good to see you guys. All right, well, that actually means if anybody has any live questions, I can take that right at the end. Okay. Whew. Yeah, overwhelming. All right. Kathy has some advice on don't rush to join the union, stay non-union as long as you can. You can still submit to union projects. Yeah, you can always Taft-Hartley onto a project too. If you get that opportunity, you can join on a project that goes SAG. So, all right, guys, I'm going to use that opportunity to say thank you for hanging in there. I went, holy smoke, an hour and 50 minutes. My goodness. I'm sorry. My bad. But hopefully you'll find a nugget or two in here that you find interesting. And thank you for hanging in there. And we'll see you around. Maybe I'll see you on social media. All right, guys. God bless.